Okay. Hello, everybody. This is a very janky version of tunnel vision right now. Hopefully it's working.
Now we wait.
We're going to see if the audio is working. So we'll see. But we were talking about USC Colorado. And we're going to keep talking about it. Hopefully with good audio. But I just jerry-rigged this stream. Jimmy didn't do it.
Yeah, Shotgun, just quick round of applause for Keely. Just absolutely
No.
crawling around, pulling stuff, unplugging. You know, you guys didn't notice this, but when I walked in, I actually cut a key vital cord, and somehow
Was this your fault, Chris?
Should have known. Loud and clear, everyone says.
Look at that, guys. Okay. We did it.
Dang it.
We did it. Okay.
Wrong cord, Chris.
Chris, you didn't get out of
look,
it.
it was red. It looked important, and I just went snip, snip. You guys were both looking. I just had to pick one.
Okay, perfect. Well, I have no idea what you guys said during the preview that I told Shotgun to just go rambling on. So I'm going to start this whole show over again like we didn't just do that. When it comes to this Colorado team, I don't know what to expect, especially when you match USC's strengths and weaknesses that we saw against Oregon State, against what Colorado can do. What are you expecting on Saturday?
Would you go first?
I mean, I expect them to try to take advantage of the limping USC run defense, and I expect them to try to run it down USC's throat. Because coming into this game, Colorado is not a very good passing team. I think I was talking to you guys about this. They are ranked 126th in the nation nationally in passing at 85 yards per game.
And what happened when you gave us that stat? You then had us try to predict who were the two teams or pick the two teams that were below them. And what happened? I nailed it.
He did nail it. I mean, if you
Wow.
just thought about it for like 2 seconds, you would get it because they're at the bottom with all the service. Everyone running the triple option or whatever's down there. So I don't expect Colorado to try to throw on this defense, obviously. And, you know, Todd Orlando kind of said we expect them to try to do the same thing that Oregon State did to us. So can't really get into what we're going to do, try to fix up some of the things. It's sensitive information. And I get that. I respect that. But yeah, they have a really good running back, Broussard, the offensive player of Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year last year. So they're expecting a dogfight in the trenches for this defense.
Now, on the other side of the ball, Keaton Slovis looked pretty good. Now, Shotgun.
Uh-oh.
Your thoughts on Keaton Slovis, I guess, were controversial. Do you want to take a minute to explain yourself here?
You know, I've just been really investing a lot in Family Feud stock, and no, that's not even actually true. I'm really invested in his NIL. That's not true either. No, if you look and you break apart his performance versus the offense in totality and the game overall, you would look at it and say he's got to get better. You can't turn the ball over 4 times. That's the biggest thing. That's a big, red flag there. But he needs a lot of help. So I wasn't going to put the entire blame on him, and I think some people are very upset at that because a lot of people look at the quarterback, and the quarterback is the person that needs to make all the plays for them, or else the quarterback is trash. And I think that's what people are looking at. And I think Keaton Slovis needs some help. I thought the offensive line played pretty well. They ran the ball effectively. I don't know why they went away from the run so early. I mean, it was 28-17, and that was when they basically scrapped the run. And you're down by 11 points with like 10 minutes left in the third quarter. And if it's working so well, why are you suddenly going to be like, they ran once to start a drive and it didn't run the rest of that drive. The next drive, I think they ran one time as well, and suddenly they're down 42-17. So I don't understand why they went away from it so well when it was effective, so effective that Keontae Ingram was not only making guys miss, but you were getting him to the second level. You were getting him 5 or 6 yards before he was getting touched at times. So I thought that they needed to rely on that more. And it's interesting. They had 70 plays in the game. They had 53 dropbacks and only 17 called runs. So, that's a huge disparity. And you might look at it and say, oh, well, it's a blowout and that's why. But like I said, I think they just went away from the run too early when they had the opportunity to still run it. So I didn't think Keaton Slovis played as bad as everyone else did. Outside of the turnovers. The turnovers are bad. Now, he didn't get help from Taj Washington on the first one. He's pressing a little bit on the last 2, but still, 4 turnovers is 4 turnovers. You have to do better than that. And especially the second one, The one in the third quarter when he had just thrown a ball that, could have been an interception, was replayed and they said that it hit the ground. He scrambles out. He doesn't get help there with the blocking, and he's trying to make a play on third and 4, I think it was. But you can't be in the middle of the pocket and get hit and fumble and give them the ball when you're at the 40-yard line, because if you just throw that ball away, it's 4th and 4, you're probably going for it, because I think it was 28-17 at that time. You got to give your offense a chance. So there's things he needs to improve on, but he wasn't trash like some people wanted to say that he was after that game. There was a lot of things that he actually did well. He's doing really well against the drop 8 coverages, and that would be my biggest question for people if Jackson Dart was healthy, is could he perform against those same type of coverages, because we didn't see those at all against Washington State for USC. That was man-to-man, and that's something that young quarterbacks can do a little bit better with, especially if they understand how to handle pressure, and Jackson Dart can do that with his mobility. And Keaton Slovis did that last year, or 2 years ago, against Stanford when they tried to play man. He tore it up his first start. So what was the next game after that, though, for Slovis? Drop 8 coverage almost all day against BYU, and they really pushed the pocket back on his feet with Chris Tonga, and he didn't perform well. He had 3 interceptions. Would the same thing happen to Jackson Dart? That would be a big question mark. And that's why I try to slow the roll a little bit on the Jackson Dart train. And I thought that Keaton Slovis did some nice things in that game, but it ultimately comes back to turning the ball over 4 times, which you can't do, and your offense scoring 27 points total. And 27 points should be okay. It shouldn't be a terrible game, but that's what it felt like. When you lose by, 18 or whatever it was, 45-27, you feel like it was just a terrible game on all sides. But, again, Keaton Slovis wasn't trash, and Keaton Slovis needs a little help.
Would this be the case, this Keaton Slovis anger, if USC had won on Saturday against Oregon State?
I don't think so. I think there would still be a lot of people calling and wanting Dart, but it wouldn't be the anger. There's always much more anger when a fan's team loses. I mean, look at the 2 coordinators. 2, completely opposite ways of handling the media afterwards. Graham Harrell speaks to the media, and, it feels like after the Stanford game, he says, it looked like Stanford wanted to tackle more than the players want to block. So maybe throwing the players under the bus a little bit, putting more blame on the players, we'll say. Todd Orlando says, that's my fault. I got to get it fixed. And it doesn't matter which direction these coordinators go. The comments on all our videos and all our posts are, this guy's trash. This guy's terrible. He's a fraud, blah, 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 blah. And, some people are upset at Graham because he doesn't take accountability. And then people look at Todd Orlando. He's like, I don't care that he says that because it's not real or something. It's like,
yeah, you can't win. You can't win. And that's the thing. We heard throughout the Helton era, he's not taking accountability. Well, now when coaches are taking accountability, people are like, well, I don't believe him. That's just BS. It's like, well, what's the answer? What do you want? Well, we'll fix that. I don't know at this point for them. So, but I mean, overall, Shotgun, what did you take away from Todd Orlando's comments? It seemed like he was pretty disgusted by what he saw on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, talking this week, said that he beat himself up like 450 times this week, which is a lot. That's a lot of self-flagellation there. But the fact that he's taken it to heart, you could tell that it hurt his soul, kind of. Yeah. That I think that's commendable to me, especially after what we've seen sometimes in the past, where people just kind of shake it off like it's nothing. He really took it to heart, and he said some interesting things. Now, he put some of it on the players. He said, yeah, there were times when we didn't get lined up correctly. There were times when we had missed assignments. But then he also brought it back to himself and said, that's on me. Maybe we're giving them a little too much, and we've got to pull it back. And he took the complete onus for it. And when you give it 45 points, it is on the defense coordinator. But it's just interesting the different ways to go about a situation like that. And we've heard from the players that after the game, Todd Orlando, both the Stanford and the the Oregon State game, that he's brought the defensive players up and told them how much he cares for them and said, we're going to get this fixed. We're going to get right back on it tomorrow, and we'll see if they can do that. That's still a big question. It's not like they have turned everything around with two practices that the media has been able to attend. But I think the effort is definitely there. And that's what stood out to me from his comments, is that he is giving everything he can to try to turn this around, and they're going to make every effort, whether it be changing personnel, whether it be changing scheme. They're going to do some different things. We saw some different guys in there. We saw some second-team guys getting first-team reps this week. So maybe there's pushing those first teamers, like your spot's not set here. So you guys gave up 45 points. We're going to try some of the second team guys. So they're going to try some different things. And I thought he did that during the game too. Unfortunately for him, nothing really worked. Nothing could really stick. And I'm sure that's just such a demoralizing feeling when you're trying to throw a bunch of different things at it and just it feels like nothing is actually working. And part of it was USC's tackling was not good. They had 13 missed tackles according to Pro Football Focus. And then the bust that they had at times really killed them, especially with those tight ends being able to get across the formation at times, and the first touchdown and a couple other big plays as well.
I can relate to that. Trying everything and just not working. Reminds me of my early Family Feud days when I would just throw stuff and see what happens.
You did fine, Chris. No, but Chris, you take diligent ghost notes during practice during the week, and Shotgun mentioned some changes that we saw. What did you see at practice this week?
Yeah, I mean, Donte has been switching it up a little bit, talked to some of the players. There's been more competitive periods asked. I mean, we have, to begin to practice, you have that little fastball, speedball kind of drill where the offense goes against the second team defense, and it's just there's no tackling, no taking down, but they're just running through like a quick walkthrough up and down the field. This week it was against the first team offense went against the first team defense. And, I talked to Brett Nealon. He kind of talked about how there's been a lot more competitive periods added. Nick Figueroa said the same thing. He said, and practices were longer. We felt that on Tuesday standing up there, and we kept saying multiple times, this practice feels longer. Mm-hmm. Feels like they cut down a little bit on special teams and focus more on some scout team period, stuff like that. And, he said, and then Figueroa also added when I talked to him that he said practices have just also kicked it up a notch. He said on Wednesday, it felt like he had just come out of a game on Saturday. That's how much he was like sweating and working and flying around there. So practice has definitely felt like it reached a new level this week.
Yeah, I think that it was a longer practice. Part of it is there was some install. So, again, going back to trying new things, and when you install stuff, it takes a little bit longer. I just came from basketball practice, and there wasn't a ton of scrimmage periods back and forth because there was a ton of install and going over things and, being very hands-on. So I think that that's one of the things that changed. But also, full pads and, that live tackling on Wednesday. I mean, the players talked about it. Vic So'oto talked about it. Just that's changing things up. And, again, I think that – look, the team is not performing to its capabilities, and there's some big-time issues. There's some issues in certain spots. But I commend the staff for at least doing some of the things that we had been asking for so long. Like when something's not going right, make an adjustment, change something, right? And they're trying and making an effort. So I commend them on that. Now we'll see if they can actually turn around the play on the field. But I think that they've at least kept the team's attention, and the team is still moving together in the same direction. It doesn't feel like the team is falling apart, which could easily have been the case after a second blowout at home. Interim head coach, most of the staff, even if you as a player are going to be here next year, most of the staff's probably not going to be. So it could easily have fallen apart already. And I think they have kept the team together with some of the different things they've done. Let's see if this team can progress. That'll be a big question. And, Colorado's a great opportunity to do that with the fact that they're pretty one-dimensional. So if you can stop the run, you should be able to slow them down. And if you can get the offense going a little bit, maybe they can get a rhythm. That was something they were able to do at Colorado a few years ago when Michael Pittman had that big game. They were slow in that game, and they got in a rhythm in the second half, and I think they scored like almost every possession they had in the second half of that game. So we'll see if that's something they can do this weekend as well.
It could be a nice confidence boost just because you're going up against a thing that just demoralized you on Saturday, the run game. This opportunity to kind of right itself, and that's what kind of Orlando and that kind of what Nick Figueroa said. The defensive guys, they're all eager to get back out there. Yeah, they're eager to go prove themselves and get back out there, get on the field again, play a game because it's been hell waiting after Saturday's performance.
I like how you censored yourself and then didn't censor yourself.
Yeah, I forgot the policy. Like, can I curse on here? I curse on Family Feud.
FCC's after you now, Chris.
Yeah, what is my cursing policy?
I don't know. I think Ryan would say whatever goes, I guess.
Okay.
Just don't drop a F-bomb,
I'm going to keep the F-bomb. This is a family show.
Good.
It just feels
not a
family show.
Yeah, not a Family Feud show.
Yeah, this isn't a back alley show,
Yeah, sure. So Coley White actually had a question. I'm going to dip into it. He said, what is Colorado's biggest strength that the Trojans have to be wary of?
I mean, Broussard, I think, is the biggest threat there. And one of the things that I thought was interesting, I think it was Vic Soto said, is that when asked about the running game, he said they like to get outside and get one-on-one matchups as much as possible. So that means they're blocking well and keeping some of those defenders inside to get them matched up against a safety, against a cornerback on the outside. And that's something Stanford did pretty good against USC, was forcing those DBs to come up and make the tackles, blocking everyone else. Because sometimes you do a read option and you leave a guy open. Maybe it's a defensive end, sometimes it's a nose tackle, but they're trying to block everyone inside and force those smaller guys to make tackles. So I think Colorado, that's something similar. And it's interesting that Todd Orlando mentioned this week that I asked him about the linebackers. Where do they need to improve? What do they need to do? And he said, I don't want them to be A-gap linebackers. I want them to be able to run to the ball, get out and fill the alleys, and help out those safeties. So it's not a one-on-one matchup on some of those throws to tight ends and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see if we see the linebackers play a little bit differently this game, if they're constantly blitzing in the A-gap, or if they're doing some different things as well.
We actually got a question about that. Sorry. Scott from Eastern Washington said, are we going to see improved play from the linebackers this week? Correct me if I'm wrong, but they seem to be non-existent this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a harsh truth, but yeah, they've not played very well. Kanai Mauga's a veteran guy, and he's done a couple nice things, but just overall, they're not making the impact that you would expect, especially in a Todd Orlando defense. As a linebackers coach, and he's usually he's got some pretty impactful linebackers that are really affecting plays, whether it be in the pass rush or just shooting gaps and being able to make a lot of tackles. We haven't necessarily seen that from the linebackers. I thought an interesting move this week, and I asked Todd Orlando about it, is Kaulana McCalla is a guy that we saw get some extended reps with the first team. Is he a guy that gets in the mix because he can be more athletic and get out in space, because he's a former safety, a former cornerback actually from high school? So, he's put on a lot of weight, onto his frame to bulk up and be a linebacker. He's played some special teams and stuff. And, the previous couple years when he was thrown in there as a true freshman, he got thrown in at Notre Dame for a few snaps at safety, and he goes in there and makes a couple plays. So it'd be interesting if he's a guy that, the starters aren't getting the job done, so they're going to try somebody else out. And does that eventually lead to number 9, Rajon Davis, getting some opportunities? He's a guy that, we've been wondering. He's gotten some special teams reps. Will he be able to get into the linebacker rotation as well?
It sounds like that's something Todd Orlando wants to do. Chris, what have you seen from Rajon just so far this season in practice?
I mean, he's definitely a guy who's flashed. I mean, I was tracking the freshmen all through fall camp, and, I don't think Rajon had moments where he would take over, like for an extended period of time. Obviously he's still a freshman, still trying to get the system down. Julian Simon went through something similar in spring camp. It seemed like he was overwhelmed at times, and he just had to figure it out, learn it. They're both super athletic guys, but they just had to, pick up the playbook. That's what some of the veterans say. They'll be okay. They just got to pick up the playbook. But with Rajon, he seemed to be getting it a little bit quicker than Julian did in the spring. And there'd be moments where he had a big play, like he filled the gap and laid a hit on someone, or he ran out into the flat and made a great play. He's got those coverage skills where he can cover like a tight end down the field, or even run with a running back and wide receivers at times. He has that skill set. We've seen him do that at Mater Dei. They'd almost put him out there at cornerback sometimes, and even move around like a safety. It was really cool to see. So that's sort of what the future is, or they hope the future is. So I don't know if he's ready to make the jump yet. We haven't really seen him. This is the snaps guy, so he can probably tell you if Rajon has played significant amount of snaps. I don't feel like he has. I don't feel like I've seen him at all in any of those live game team periods. Maybe a couple times, garbage time. I can't even confirm on that.
He got a couple snaps. I think the last drive against San Jose State, I think that was it. I think like 9 or 10 snaps there. On defense, he hasn't played any other than that. He has played a little bit on special teams each of the last 3 games. So that's 4 games. So he's a guy that's not going to redshirt. If you've played the first 4 games, they're not going to sit you the rest of the season unless you get hurt. So Rajon Davis is a guy that they're not going to redshirt. They're not going to burn. They're burning that red shirt, at least for this season. So that tells me he's a guy they want to progress. They want to see it. And it's interesting. You mentioned how you got to have the playbook down, right? And that's the thing for all freshmen, is how much can you learn the playbook? And we've heard that about Corey Foreman. We've heard that about Michael Trigg. Big impact players potentially for USC. But even more so, when the coordinator is your position coach, he's going to put a ton of stuff on those linebackers, right? And that's
the hardest, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it. And we saw last year with the linebackers just in the first couple games in Todd Orlando's defense, they struggled. And then they started to come on when it felt like they kind of were grasping the defense a little bit better. So maybe that's something we see out of a guy like Rajon Davis and Julian Simon, hopefully, that both of those guys start to come on and they at least push the guys that are on the first and second team right now, because both those guys aren't really getting even second team reps right now. A little bit for Rajon Davis, but we'll see if they can start pushing those guys a little bit more and get some opportunities down the line.
Speaking of getting the hang of the playbook, I think one of the storylines coming out of the Oregon State game was Michael Trigg and how he's gotten more reps and is kind of coming on. We heard that from USC's offensive coaches. What did you see from the tight end this week in practice?
You go first.
I mean, it just seems like they're trying to push him along. I mean, Donte Williams knows, I think everyone sees that how much of a weapon he can be for this offense, and they're obviously starving for weapons to help out number 15 out there. And, Gary Bryant's still emerging, but they still need more help. Keaton needs more help, as you alluded to. So, and Trigg has the ability to be just an absolute beast, kind of similar to Drake was doing his freshman season. Could be a matchup issue for guys. He's too big for a safety to cover and more athletic than a linebacker to cover. That's just the type of talent that he brings. And, you could definitely tell in practice this week, it seems like he was a bit more involved. On Saturday, you could tell they were trying to get him the ball a little bit more. And I just think he brings this sort of energy. When I saw him warming up at the San Jose State game, he was going crazy, getting everybody hyped up. And then after, I believe it was an incomplete pass, or maybe it was the personal foul or the PI he picked up, but he was just like so excited. He didn't even make the play. I don't think, but he was just like getting hyped and like going about and yelling and screaming. And that's the kind of thing you need for an offense that's sort of searching for a spark like that. And all it takes is for him to get a pass over the middle and then bull over 3 guys, like we've seen him do in practice all the time, or moss 2 guys down the field for a 40-yard gain or something like that. All it takes is a play like that to spark something and get the sideline going crazy. And I think that's something he could absolutely bring to this offense.
Yeah, you touched on 2 things that Seth Dagey has told me, one in fall camp and one this week when talking about Michael Trigg. But in fall camp, I asked him about some of the receivers, the inside receivers, getting someone to step up. And he said, he saw in Drake London his freshman year, he had one big practice, or last year actually, he was struggling a little bit in fall camp, and he had one big practice, made a couple of moss catches, went up over guys, and his confidence just exploded from there. And you saw him take off and really, be that guy last year in the slot for them. And maybe that's what one of these guys is looking for. Both Taj Washington, and Gary Bryant Jr. have shown some positive things, but no one's really stepped up and taken over that number 2 role. And the same thing with Michael Trigg. I think he presents a unique weapon. And you see, actually, when he's on the field, safeties stay over the top of him a little bit longer than they do Eric Cromanhook or Jude Wolfe or even Malcolm Epps. They stay over there a little bit longer, and that creates that back shoulder throw that you can throw to Drake London that Keaton Slovis has got a great connection with right now because that safety can't get over there to help out. So that's something that he does. He played his career-high snaps last week, and he had a great week of practice last week is what the coaches were saying, and that's one of the reasons why he got those opportunities. But then also Dagey said about him that he's a guy that they eventually want to be an inline tight end. They eventually want to do that, but they're just bringing him along, him and Malcolm Epps as well. But he just presents a different thing. And the thing that Dagey said this week about him was that when you talk about his energy, he said, they've tried to run a couple plays for him, actually. They said they tried to get the ball in his hands in the San Jose State game late. They were going to try to run a play, and the coverage was flipped on them, so they flipped the play. And so Eric Cromanhook gets the touchdown. And he said against Washington State, similar thing. They wanted to run a play. They wanted to, try to use Trigg as a weapon, use him on a post. The coverage, they got the coverage backwards, so they flipped it again, the coverage they were expecting. And so it's Joseph Manjack that gets that 42-yard gain on a post route. And he said, Trigg's not getting a lot of opportunities as far as targets and stuff in those first couple games. And the question was, how has he kind of handled, that not having that opportunity? And Dagey said, look at those 2 plays and see who's the first person there to celebrate. And he's so hyped up for Eric Cromanhook getting that touchdown, so hyped up for his fellow freshman Joseph Manjack. That's Michael Trigg, and that's the energy he brings. He's a little bit just it doesn't matter what it is. He's a little bit like a Dory Jackson to me. He's just always got a smile on his face. Like you just can't not be happy when you're around him. Is what it sounds like the vibe is around from his teammates. It's just when he's there, like he's having a good time, regardless of what else is going on in the world. He's just a guy that's going to bring everyone else up a little bit, and that's what this offense needs a little bit. I think there's been too many times when they're down in the doldrums, and he's a guy. If he makes a big play, I think you're going to see everyone on the sideline explode, similar to when Kalen Bullock had his interception at Washington State. Just he couldn't get back to the sideline all the way. And Gavin Morris is shoving people from behind to try to get them back in the box so they don't get a penalty. But I think that's the kind of energy he brings on the offensive side.
Yeah, imagine when he scores. He might have pull out some fireworks that he keeps in his back plate and just let him off.
Is he going to go like Joe Horn? He's going to pull out a Sharpie or something?
Yeah,
he's
going to do something.
So we've gotten a lot of questions about USC's quarterback status, so I'm just going to run through and get your guys' thoughts. Keaton Slovis was back practicing this week. No setbacks from the game on Saturday. How did he look in practice, gentlemen?
So it looked fine. I mean, nothing notable, positive or negative. There was a couple of crispy throws, I would call them. A couple of window throws, zippy throws. As I just comment sometimes on throws or catches. The most common thing these two hear from me at practice is
catch the ball.
Yeah, when you don't catch the ball. That's what your job is receiver. Yes. It means receive the ball. That's the most common thing I say. But also when I see a nice throw, ooh, zippy. Or if it's a window throw and different things, I'm just pointing things out in case they're not paying attention to that part of practice and looking at something else.
This is not what I asked at all, but yes, go for it.
You guys may be paying attention to one-on-ones on the other end, so I pointed it out so that Chris can put it down in his ghost notes.
Behind the scenes right
But
now.
I thought that there were a couple times, especially on Tuesday, when we were seeing more of the scout team stuff and the ones versus twos at end of practice and stuff that they did the more competition periods. I thought Slovis had a couple of nice zip throws in there. So I didn't think it was necessarily notable that he had an amazing practice, but I didn't think that he was struggling at all. The thing after rewatching the tape of the broadcast of this game against Oregon State is no questions about his arm strength or the shoulder or the elbow or anything. There hasn't been the flutter balls that we saw last year. He made the biggest thing, and I asked Donte Williams where he wanted to see him improve, and he said he's got to pull the trigger a little bit more. And I think that, and I asked Donte Williams the same thing. I was like, how do you balance that with patience with as much drop 8 as you're seeing? And it's kind of, there's a time to be aggressive and there's a time to be patient based on the defenses you're seeing and the situations of the game. But so far, I think that when he's had an opportunity, he's zipped the ball in there. So the shoulder and the arm looks fine, the elbow. So I think that those questions that we had before the season are answered. Now, the confidence questions and being able to play to the top of his ability, still a little bit to go there.
Now, when it comes to Miller Moss being the second-team quarterback in practice, I feel like there's this kind of video game mode that fans get into sometimes where if they're frustrated with the starting quarterback, they're like, put in the next guy. And so we've seen some comments that are like, put in Miller Moss. What are your thoughts on that, considering he's played one down and hasn't played really football in 2 years?
It wasn't even a throw.
Yeah, it was a handoff.
Whenever I interview him next, I'm probably going to be like, why did you not check to a throw there?
Yeah.
That's what I would have done.
Absolutely what Shotgun would have done.
Yeah.
He was like, no.
Especially at that time, you're like, oh, Keaton will probably be back next week. Jackson's going to be the number 2 right now. Number 3, might as well take my shot, right? You throw a touchdown, everyone loves you.
What if it's a pick 6?
Don't throw a pick 6. Simple. Simple solutions.
How do you look in practice, gentlemen?
I mean, Miller's been pretty consistent. I think he did have one interception, but it wasn't anything where I was like, oh, Miller's really struggling. He's been super consistent since, fall camp started. He made the improvements from spring when he was a little bit hesitant to push it down the field, but he's been steady as that number 2 in practice.
Mm-hmm. Now, I saw a comment about this. I tweeted out that Jackson Dart was at practice, and what I mean by that is we actually saw him for the first time since the Washington State game, at least in a football setting. But he was not dressed out. He had his jersey on, no pads, and he had his knee brace on, so he looked like he was in the same state as we saw on Saturday, still recovering in that sense. So he wasn't returning to practice, if there was any confusion there.
Don't forget the beanie.
Oh, yeah, and the Jordans.
And you have to be super specific anytime you say anything about Jackson at this point.
That's true.
But did you hear that subtle dig she gave there? She said that we saw him on Tuesday or Wednesday, It was the first time I'd seen him in a football setting, so I think she's not calling Saturday a football setting.
No,
Ooh.
that was just
Yes. Get
no.
it in there, Keely.
No. This is a flustered show, so I apologize. And speaking of, put your questions in rapid fire. We're gonna get to some questions pretty soon here. I don't remember what you guys said about your thoughts about how this game will go on Saturday, so I'm gonna ask again. How do you think this one's gonna go?
I mean, I think we answered this a little bit at the beginning of both shows, but it comes down to stopping the run. That's what it all comes down to. They're not a team that can throw the ball really well, so USC should be able to match up man-to-man like they want to and bring pressures. Now, do they try to do some different type of pressures because they know they're going to run the entire time? And I don't think that there's any fear of the quarterback right now. Now, the quarterback can run a little bit, maybe use a spy. So there's some different things there, but I think it all comes back to, can you stop the run?
Chris, thoughts?
Why do I always have to follow him when he makes really good points?
You're used to this on Family Feud.
I guess, but then I can self-edit myself or have you edit me to make me sound smarter
Sure.
and more not dumb.
Not dumb, yes. Okay, well, to do that, I'm going to jump into some questions. We had a question from Big T37 who said, from what you guys saw, what are the chances that Max Gibbs gets run at nose tackle this Saturday?
These are rapid fire?
Oh, these are just questions.
Oh.
Always for Shotgun, they should be rapid
I mean,
fire.
we kind of said this, I guess, when the audio was crappy, but I just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, maybe he comes in for a couple goal line stops or maybe some keys plays, maybe like 10, or maybe they run him as much as he can go. And like I said, obviously he's a big man, listed at 390, 6'7", and to go all the way to Colorado with that altitude, that's a tough challenge. For a big guy like that, so that's working against him. But I really don't know. Gun to my head, I think he plays a little bit.
So I mentioned the before the reboot that when we first saw this switch, and last week we saw Gina Quinones at nose tackle a little bit, switching over on the scout team. We saw Toa Lobendon at one point this week, just because they don't have enough bodies to be able to fill out a scout team. So I thought, this is probably just a scout team change. And Chris kind of, he's like, what do you think of the switch? And I'm like, I don't think it's anything. But then we saw him on scout team and going baby Vince Wilfork on people and just pushing the pocket back on people. You got, I think it was Toa or one of the other GAs was yelling, stop, Max, stop, because he was about to run over Keaton Slovis because I don't know if they're just not used to having a scout team player be able to get in the backfield like that. But he was such a large man, which is difficult to move him, right? But his strength was really surprising to me. That's not what I expected from having seen him in high school and seeing him grow up, that he would have that strength. So the work he's done in the weight room, he's lost 50 pounds is what Donte Williams said since he got here. So, along with losing that weight, he's gaining some muscle, it seems, and he looked really good there. So maybe there is, from seeing that and the fact that he went from the scout team to join the first and second group of defensive linemen and, do some scout team work on that end, it made you go, maybe they said, this looks much better than we expected. You guys aren't using him, right? Can we borrow him for at least a little bit? And Donte Williams was non-committal on whether this is a permanent change or anything. He said it's a week change and they'll go from here. So we'll see what the longevity of this ends up being. But he made some nice plays in there and at least just forcing the pocket backwards. I pointed this out on Film Study, which will be up, I believe, tomorrow or later tonight, that there was one play where Drake Jackson had a great rush around the edge. But one of the reasons why he and Corey Foreman and some of those edge guys aren't getting sacks is because the quarterbacks are able to step up almost every time. They're not able to push the pocket back. Their defensive tackles aren't doing that. So the quarterbacks can step up and avoid that outside rush, and that's costing USC some sacks. So that's one of the reasons why their sack numbers are so low right now. Maybe Max Gibbs makes a change to that.
Two quick things. As far as your comment about scout team defense not getting the backfield, Solo gets in the backfield a lot playing scout team defense on the edge.
Okay.
I just want to throw that out there. Keely would agree with me. She's not saying anything.
I won't disagree with that.
I agree.
I was thinking more defensive lineman in my head, but that is a great point.
He plays down there sometimes. And then number two, in Max's defense, obviously you never touch the quarterback. That's like the number one rule. But if I got that much momentum and I'm 390, half of that's not on my fault. Half of that's got to be on the quarterback. I'm just gonna call the play. I'm just moving out the way. It's hard to stop when you're going down that fast. When you got the steam going, you can't just shut it off.
Shouldn't someone be yelling at the center and the guards that are supposed to be blocking him? Like that's who I would be yelling at.
Yeah.
But don't blame Max Gibbs for getting downhill.
They just need to have Toa behind Slovis, and when it's getting like that red zone, he just comes in and runs into it just like an extra ram protection.
Condition his body for more hits. Playing defensive line. Sure.
We got a question from Coley White who said, "Can or is USC doing anything to prepare for the higher altitude?"
I asked a couple players about this, and they all kind of gave me the same thing. Like, I mean, you can't really prepare for it. It's just something you have to deal with. Nick Figueroa said, "The best thing I do is, after practice, make sure you get those extra gassers in."
Yeah.
One thing you can actually do, which is like wear a mask.
Oh, he also said that wear a mask while you're practicing.
Yeah.
He said we might as well just start doing that too.
I mean, if most people who worked out during the pandemic and before, while everyone was wearing masks, that's kind of what it felt like. And, they have those altitude masks that that are made for that type of training as well. So it's not the worst of ideas. It's a very simple fix, but something that helps you. It just labors your breathing a little bit more and lets you, suck in air. Try to suck in air a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, but to the point, we haven't seen like the whole defense wear anti-whatever altitude mask during practice. That is not something we've seen.
So Alex has a question, and I've seen this
I wanted to wear one for practice, but Keely wouldn't let me.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
That makes sense.
I'm the fun police over here. Alex had a question that I've seen kind of pop up on the P as well. He wanted to know, has there been any player-only meetings this week? That's kind of the theme that people want to see from a team when it's kind of going south, that player meeting. I know USC had one in 2016 when they went 1-3 and then turned things around. From what we've heard, no player meeting so far since the firing.
Yeah, I kind of asked Nick about this too. I was like, have you, stepped up to the team, or have you guys gathered in like as a unit or anything like that? He said, no, there hasn't really been like a players only meeting or anything like that, but he felt like they've had some great meetings, defensive meetings this week. That's kind of the only point that he made on that. So
what's interesting is that they don't invite us to the players only meeting.
We're not players, Shotgun.
But he's senior sack.
See, if I was on the team, I could get in there.
Oh.
If I
guess that's a requirement,
there,
huh?
Yeah. I could.
Players only team meeting.
Here's a play for you.
Gotcha.
Just thought of it right now. You get me on as like the end, Max in the middle. I jump onto his back on the snap. He carries me in there while the two guys are.
Isn't that illegal? Remember
Is it?
On field goals and stuff, you're not allowed to jump on someone's back?
But what of my team?
I don't know if it's.
I'd be like one of those
allowed or
one of
not.
those bush babies, just clinging on, and I just jump off at the last second.
Okay.
Great opportunity.
Anyway, we have another question.
That's a Family Feud bit that just
That is,
went.
yes. It's a different
But whatever,
tone
I can't.
for tunnel
I
vision,
can't.
Chris. It's okay.
I can't control myself. Like
But-
Max going downhill, I can't stop.
Okay.
Once I get the momentum.
Ulau had a question that said, Shotgun, does the poor team performance we see on the field have to do with the poor recruiting classes coming to light with the offensive line, linebackers, and defensive line, even maybe quarterback?
Stop talking bad about the offensive line.
Yeah, I think it's definitely that. I think more so at the defensive line, the nose tackle position in particular, because, I mean, just linemen in general, they haven't had a bunch of trench tanks, is what I like to call them. Those big nose tackles. You had Trevor Trout. Unfortunately, his career's over. You had Jay Toya. Unfortunately, he transferred. You have Brandon Peely, who's an underrated guy, but still a 3-star guy. He's, injured right now. So none of the guys that you brought in have been those big 330-pound guys. The last guy that has performed is Marlon Tuipulotu. He and Jay Tefele were both over 300 pounds coming in, and both of those guys, near 5-star. I can't remember. I think one of them was a 5-star, one of them was a composite 5-star, if I remember correctly. But both of those guys performed. When you bring in 3-star big boys like that, it takes some time to develop, and right now USC they need someone that can play right now, and they don't have that. Jay Toya was a 4-star, and he was ready to play, and unfortunately he transferred. Jamar Sakona and Kobe Pepe were 3-stars, and they're developing. And we think that there's some positive signs from them, but they've both had setbacks. Kobe Pepe hasn't practiced the last couple of weeks. Jamar Sakona missed time during camp because of COVID protocols. So, you're you're very thin on bodies there. They don't have a number of guys there to begin with, and they're really missing out on that talent that can step in and play right away.
We got a question from Kevin, who's kind of applying the football transitive property here. He says, do you think USC could stay within 3 points of 15th ranked Texas A&M? Colorado did earlier this season. I predict Colorado will beat USC, he says.
I mean, it's not a terrible prediction. I mean, so far you could have predicted anyone on USC's schedule to beat them. With the way that they performed against Stanford and Oregon State, you can't, no one can flat out and just be like, that's crazy. That's an outrageous claim that they would lose that game. But you can't take the transitive property because matchups are so important in games like this. Texas A&M lost their starting quarterback at the beginning of that game. That played into it. And Texas A&M hasn't looked great since that game either. They've looked okay, but not great. So maybe they were a little bit overrated to begin the season as highly ranked as they were. And they're still trying to figure some things out. So maybe USC could stay within 3 points of them or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. We had a question from DD Diego who said, will Kyle Ford play on Saturday? Chris, what did you see from Kyle in practice?
He looked like a full participant on Tuesday and Wednesday. I talked to him briefly after the game Saturday. He said, I just got banged up a little bit. Wasn't confident in the knee a little bit. That's why he told the training staff before the game, I don't feel ready. So they sat him. Just based off practice, I would say he suits up. So we'll see about that.
So Tuesday wasn't a full participant, it didn't seem like. He did all the individual drills and stuff. I don't remember seeing him in any of the team stuff. Maybe that's just because he's on the second team. But Wednesday we did see more of him, which I think is actually a positive sign that he's healing and doing more later in the week. But that's the thing, 2 ACL injuries.
Yeah.
If you don't feel right, you're not going to want to go out there and risk it. So I think that he was smart to listen to your body, take a week off if that's what it needs, and come back and try to be ready next week.
Mm-hmm. We had a question from William who said, when will Jackson Dart be back to play?
When his knee is healed.
Yeah.
We'll go with that.
We don't know the specifics of how bad the tear was. We've seen anywhere between 3 and 6 weeks, but we have to see. We know that he's trying hard to get back as fast as possible with the rehab and whatnot, but they're not disclosing any details on that front.
Week to week.
Week to week,
yeah.
Indeed.
The thing with the meniscus surgery, which we explained a little bit last week in more depth, but it can be very simple, and it's just you shave off a piece, or it can be a full repair, and it can be anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks, like Keely talked about, for the simple repair, for the simple shave, or the more elaborate repair, which is better in the long run, can be 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, but the fact that he's not walking around on crutches would lead me to believe that it's not severe, but like I said, we don't know the severity. We had a question from Ladarius, who's actually an Alabama fan, who stopped in to say hi, so thank you. We love it when fans of other programs stop in. He said,
except for Coley and his Notre Dame case. Just kidding, Coley. We love you.
He says, do y'all believe, love the y'all too, do y'all believe that USC will be back in the next 5 years?
That's a tough question.
It is.
I'm not going to expand on this in any way, but yes.
What a cop-out.
I'll expand on a little bit. I think they are much better set to do that now. Now, obviously, they got to turn around and get the talent back that they were getting 5 years ago and 10 years ago. But I feel like all the resources that have been invested around the program are the elements that they need to be able to take that step, and they just have to find the right head coach to do it.
I don't think that's too hard to get the talent back in. It's USC. It's easy to recruit at USC.
It is, except for linemen, apparently.
Well, you'll have a new head coach
that's what needs to happen.
They'll
but
see that.
It is more difficult to recruit linemen on the West Coast, and particularly in Southern California, where you have a hotbed of skill players, but not necessarily the same amount of linemen that have been coming through. So it will take a little bit of effort. USC is definitely capable of it, and whoever the next head coach should definitely be capable of recruiting that type of player too.
We got a question from Rick who said, why isn't Keenan Kristen in the running back rotation? He is currently suspended from team activities because of an off-field incident. So it's not a playing time thing. He is actually suspended from team activities. We had a question from Coley, who you called out, Shotgun. He says, what is the one thing you can do since boss man Ryan isn't here? Talk basketball? No food analogies?
We did have Ben ask a question about basketball as well.
And you can. I will give you full permission, Shotgun.
Yeah, he asked if I say basketball practice and how do they look, because the USC's basketball team lost Evan Mobley and Taj Edey, which is huge. But do we have dudes that can take over and keep us towards the top of the pack? I think the answer is yes. Now I only saw one practice. There was a lot of install. This is the third practice of their fall training camp. So, there's 4 or 5 newcomers. Boogie Ellis, the transfer from Memphis, is going to be playing that lead guard position alongside Ethan Anderson. And I think a lot of guys look much bigger, actually, as far as just thickness. Isaiah Mobley looks like he's taking his body to a whole nother level. His calves, at least, look the size of Onyeka Okongwu's calves. Now, he doesn't have the same thighs yet. That's going to be a work in progress because Onyeka was basically tanks for legs. But he's making great strides there and can play down the post. His shot looked terrific today. Just the stroke of it was fantastic. He was knocking down 3 after 3 at times. Some of the newcomers coming in, Harrison Hornery, the freshman out of Mater Dei, who I didn't think would scratch the rotation at all. He has that ability to go and make plays and just does all the fundamentals for you and gets offensive rebounds and stuff. So he might get a couple of minutes. Malik Thomas and Reese Dixon Waters, the 2 freshmen. Reese Dixon Waters reclassified last year because of COVID, but both of those guys could make an impact. But it's going to be very tough for those guys to get in the rotation because of how much talent they actually have this year. So it should be really interesting. This fall camp, and I talked to Andy Enfield after practice, he said this fall camp is going to be really telling because for those position battles, because those guys are trying to learn everything, but they got to compete and battle because of how much talent they have. So USC basketball, I think, has reloaded to an extent. Now, they don't have an Evan Mobley. He's a unicorn. He's one of a kind. But I think that the team has a ton of talent as well, and I think they have the potential to play together really well with glue guys like Chavez Goodwin and Isaiah White returning to the team. I think those type of players are guys that help take you on those deep runs in the tournament. So I was impressed with them today, even though it was, like I said, a lot of install, a lot of communication, a lot of learning, and I really liked the way a lot of the young guys were asking questions and asking the right questions about different sets and different things. So we'll see if they continue to progress and if they can gel, because that's always a thing that you wonder with a basketball team with only 5 guys on the field and with newcomers coming in.
Mm-hmm.
Keely, I'm going to jump in here right quick so you can take a 5-minute break. Shotgun, I'm just going to throw this out here because I'm a little bored. So I want some more creative questions, guys. Help us out. Shotgun, if you could take one basketball player and put him on the basketball team.
Basketball player and put him on a basketball team?
You know what I meant. On the football team. Who are you picking and where are you putting them?
Drake London.
That's a really good answer.
Thank you.
I said basketball team on the football team.
No,
Yeah.
you didn't.
But he was a basketball player.
Yeah,
and I was on the
I
football
get it. You know what I'm saying, you jackass.
Chris.
Chavez Goodwin could probably be a good tight end, or Isaiah Mobley, either one of those big guys.
Not someone's going to ride the bench.
6'10", 6'9", big target, but also fluid, and probably could block too. Isaiah Mobley's adding the leg strength, so he might be a guy that could be an inline tight end as well.
Alrighty, we have a couple more questions, then I'm going to wrap up this show.
Maybe Ethan Anderson as a running back too.
Interesting. Thank you to everyone who stuck along for this janky show. We tried our best to get it back on track. Trojan said, is there any scenario barring injury that Miller Moss takes over for Keaton Slovis?
No.
Chris.
I'm over it.
It's possible, but it's unlikely. We'll put it that way.
We had a question from Ulau Ulau, who keeps asking us, really wants to know from you, Shotgun. Do you think that USC will ever see the air raid ran properly with reckless abandon that the play caller and QB need to play with in order to make the run game respectable?
I think that they're calling pass plays that same reckless abandon. I just don't think that they take as many shots as I would think that they would do with the air raid. There's some features of at least a Mike Leach air raid or an Oklahoma State Mike Gundy air raid that I don't see incorporated in Graham Harrell's version of air raid. And I think their talent lends to the ability to run the ball this year and make an adjustment and run the ball a little bit more than you normally would. So I know some people the last couple of weeks after Helton's fire were saying, oh, now the air raid can go full air raid and throw it as many times as they want. And I think they actually should run the ball more this year.
Interesting. Is that a product of Clay McGuire coming in and shoring up some of those issues?
I think so because, I think that the offensive line is playing better. Now, they didn't play very good against Washington. They played bad against Washington State, excuse me. But they bounced back last week. They handled movement a little bit more. They had their best rushing attack. Even with those two very young tackles, they're doing enough for the offense to be successful. Keaton Slovis is not constantly under attack from free rushers, which was the case at times in the past. And I think that they're opening up some running holes, which is completely different. Great stat that I didn't realize until I was doing film study, and I calculated it up. But USC, 3rd and 3 or shorter. What do you think they have done so far this season?
What their conversion rate?
Yeah.
For 3rd and 3 and shorter?
I'm going to say 82.
I know they're pretty high in third down conversions overall. They're one of the higher teams. I would say like 65%.
10 of 12 this year on 3rd and 3 and shorter. So 83%. So Keely, you're right on it there.
Wow, that was pretty fun.
In 3rd and 1 situations, which was a huge issue in the past, right? Getting to short yardage and just not being able to pick up that yard. This year, I think they're 4 of 5 so far. They had 3 on Saturday. And the one that they didn't get, they got on 4th down with a Keaton Slovis sneak under center, something different. So I think that's one of the areas they've really cleaned up is being able to pick up that short yardage. No one's really noticed it because of kind of the way the games have gone. They've been blowouts. But you look back at this past week, they had a 3rd and 1, back-to-back false starts turned into 3rd and 11. You would think that they pick up that first down there, and that's an opportunity to go down and make the game closer in the 3rd quarter. You never know what happens from there. But, that's one of the areas they've really improved. And just being able to pick up short yardage situations is such a big improvement because you just keep drives alive and keep moving. And so I think that comes a lot with what Clay McGuire has done with this offense line for sure.
Yeah. Alrighty, a couple more questions, and then we're going to wrap this one up. Steven says, do you think USC will end up at the end of the season at the bottom 2 spots of the Pac-12 South or top 2 spots of the South? Your guess.
So I have to pick bottom or top?
Yes.
I think there's a better chance for them to be at the top than the bottom.
Really?
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
Jasper Smith says, after his drops against Oregon State, where is Taj Washington on the depth chart? It seemed like Harry Colbert was not too concerned by his drops.
Which is interesting. So Donte Williams said today with Taj Washington that he's had 2 bruised thumbs, basically. So he said that has played into the drops, which your thumbs are pretty important when you're trying to catch a football. But Kerry Colbert on Tuesday said that he's not worried about it. Taj has already passed Saturday's performance. He said he did say he sent him some clips of some of the top wide receivers in the NFL and them dropping balls to say, hey, look, it happens to everyone. Just move on past it. But they've got to catch the ball. That's the thing. They need to make more plays. His were a couple of first down opportunities, and one of them turned into an interception. So if he catches all 3 of those balls that are catchable balls, 2 of them at least are drops, then USC has 3 more first downs than they had. So, you got to do your job. That's the same thing with the defense. Some of the guys are trying to do too much and trying to do this and that. Do your job. It's simple, and sometimes it's boring, but, do what your position at least says,
Make the plays that come to you.
There you go. That's a good one.
Walker Lamer says, has USC ever run a Wildcat formation?
The last time I remember Wildcat was Trey Madden. I think they've done it a couple times since then. It was with Dylan Baxter, I believe, was right before him. But that was more Lane Kiffin. I think Sark may have done it, maybe. But Graham Harrell is not running a Wildcat. But they did, Tyler Vaughns did take some snaps there a couple years ago at quarterback because they were so thin on quarterback health at one point when they were going to Colorado.
It should be Manjak's job. If it comes to that, he was a do-all offensive player in Texas, running, passing, receiving. So that could be a dangerous weapon if you ever did do a Wildcat. So it should go to him.
Interesting. Didi Diego brought up a good point. He said Katie Nixon, touchdown catch this Saturday. Katie Nixon returning to his old team, Colorado.
KD week. I hope he scores one. That just makes for such a fun storyline.
Sure.
It's not making my predictions list, but it's a nice thing that would happen.
I think he has 2 catches on the season, so Anyone that has 2 catches, I'm not immediately jumping to, and that played 3 snaps, maybe 4 snaps last game, I'm not jumping to an immediate touchdown catch.
Alrighty, I'm going to wrap this show up. Actually, one more, sorry.
Oh.
Michael Ford said, speaking of Solo, from what you guys see at practice, how far away is he from being a starter?
A starter?
He said starter.
I would say a year away.
How about playing? Let's dial it down a notch.
Consistently. I could see by the end of the year him being like a consistent special teams guy. He got the one play in the punt return, I believe.
One play on a punt return in the Stanford game. Has not dressed since then, though. Or take that back. Did not dress at Washington State. Did dress against Oregon State, but did not play.
What did you take away from what seemed to be a setback last week, and then we saw some interesting things this week with Solo? What do you think he's at right now? It seems like he took a little bit of a step back.
Yeah, but he seemed fine this week.
Except for the end of Wednesday's practice, right, Shotgun?
I pulled him
the
out
end
a
of
little bit.
Tuesday's practice. Where he actually, I think he tossed his gloves. He has an ankle brace. He tossed that as well. I think he was a little frustrated. We also saw Drake London the same on Tuesday, frustrated with some nagging injuries and stuff. But those guys are playing through, and that's what this coaching staff wants. They don't want guys sitting out. And Donte Williams even said, he was asked about Isaac Taylor-Stewart, who we haven't talked about, who's actually played really well outside of that Stanford game. Was not very good in the Stanford game, but outside the Stanford game, he was USC's top-graded player this past week, even though he only played the first half. Where's his health going to be? Is Joshua Jackson or Jaden Williams going to be getting a ton of reps on Saturday? Donte Williams said he should be able to play, but he said he has a policy that if you do not practice, then you're not going to start. So it doesn't seem Isaac Taylor will start at least, and we'll see if he plays on Saturday. But I think that's why they're pushing those guys. What's the difference between an injury and being hurt? Are you hurt or are you injured? So I think they're trying to push guys and trying to build that toughness. Again, another thing that I think is a positive development for the team as a whole and the culture. But we'll see, how it works out as the season progresses.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty, I'm going to wrap this one up. Chris, I found your burner, or maybe your brother's burner, because it's big T. Maybe it's like Trevino. He says, me and Jack is the Trevino of the football team, Jack of all trades. There you go.
We did have one question for Chris.
Oh.
Asked, what do you think this D-line looks like if we didn't miss out on our recruits? Kayvon with Drake Jackson, who would fill the middle?
Wait, this is specifically for me?
It says for Chris.
I'm trying to think who they missed out on.
You think while I give a shout out to Ladarius, who said, new subscriber, guys, roll tide and fight on. Well, thank you. We love subscribers from other programs. Thanks for stopping by.
I guess
Kayvon
the one that
and Mace Funa coming off the other edge.
Like the whole D-line.
D-line.
I think Siaka Ika.
Oh, yeah.
That's usually a guy out of Utah. That's a guy like USC has traditionally wrapped up that area, pulling those Polynesians out of Utah, big defensive linemen as the guy Jay Tufele.
Mm-hmm.
The last one, Ika was very interested in USC. It just never clicked.
It had 2 chances at it.
2 chances, went to LSU. Won a natty there. Jack Fish, the rapper. That's his rap name. You can check him out on Spotify. I'm his agent, I guess. I don't know. And then went in the portal. There was some flirting there, but he ended up at Baylor. So that's a guy who would absolutely kind of fill that nose tackle interior spot. I think that's the one off the top of my head is that's a big miss.
And the number 1 recruit in the nation last year, JT Tuimoloau.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fantasy, but you can imagine Kayvon, Corey Foreman, and Drake Jackson kind of rotating somehow on the edges with someone like Siaki Ika as the nose tackle, and then having JT Tuimoloau rushing as a defensive tackle, going against a guard, and you just pick whichever guard sucks on the other team and just go after them with that type of pass rush. And especially the fact that you would have a couple more years of it, for the most part. I think that would be, it's a nice thought, but, USC struggled. And that's the difference. If you can wrap up those defensive linemen and they can create pressure, it changes everything you can do behind it. And I think that's one of the things you're seeing with Todd Orlando, because he's bringing all those blitzes because they're trying to get pressure. They're trying to heat up the quarterbacks, and they're just not successfully getting there either with 4 guys, 5 guys, 6 guys, 7 guys even at times. That the first touchdown pass to Tyjon Lindsey was an all-out blitz 3rd and 5, USC couldn't get to the quarterback, and it's one-on-one coverage, and Tyjon Lindsey is going to beat your safety pretty much every time.
Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for today's show. Once again, sorry for the technical difficulties. We're working without the engineer Ryan here, so we tried our best. But that's going to wrap it up. We'll be back on Sunday to recap the show, so be sure to stay tuned for that. But that's Shotgun, that's Chris, I'm Keely. We'll see y'all next time. Bye.
Thanks for joining us, guys.